I mean, Nigel makes the point that empire is part of human history. We talked about this earlier. He also makes the point that slavery is part of human history. He mentioned, quote unquote, Islamic slavery and other forms of slavery. What's your response to that? What would you say?
I mean, well, I think there's a real issue about the lack of specificity about what is being talked about. It is just not true that all societies had forms of slavery that were equivalent in any way. What emerges with the European trade in human beings is a very distinct form of slavery which involves the transaction of human beings. So you have forms of servitude and you have forms of coerced labor in societies where there weren't previously ideas of free labor. What's distinct about the emergence of chattel slavery as the Europeans undertake it is that what's happening in Europe at the time is the emergence of the idea of free labor. So to have free labor at home, but to kidnap and enslave populations elsewhere and to transact them, and that's a very distinct form from any other type of serfdom, servitude, or forms of bondage that exist in any other part of the world.
Nigel.
So I fully accept that there were different forms of slavery. I need to ponder what you've said, quite understand the significance of it. What I don't accept is that the form of enslavement that the Europeans engaged in was uniquely brutal. It was very brutal, it wasn't uniquely so. In terms of reparations, to finger the British alone, and it's only the British or Europeans who are being fingered, is just unfair, given the fact that we abolished it, we suppressed it, we paid for that, and that no one is asking money from Africa. And West Africans were involved in enslaving other Africans, at least from the 1500s onwards.
Very briefly, you want to comment?
The abolition of slavery was followed by a century or more of indenture. So it's not as if abolition was the end of the story. So we often talk about abolition as if it's the end of the story of European involvement in the enslavement of populations. Not only do we not talk about enslavement within the Indian Ocean world, but only focus on transatlantic slavery, but we also don't then look at the systems of indenture that took millions of Indians and Chinese to the Caribbean. Indenture is not different to enslavement.
Morally speaking, indenture and slavery are not the same thing.
Just on slavery, though, before I do want to go to the audience, you could have written a book and said, I think that we did a great job ending slavery, which we did. But I don't know if this is just because it helps you become a bestseller, but you add this line, the tyranny of imaginary guilt. You're a Christian theologian, and you're saying we shouldn't feel guilty at all about 3 million Africans being taken out of their homes and moved to across the Atlantic? The guilt is imaginary? Why can't we have guilt and also believe everything you just said?
First of all, we can only feel guilt for something we did.
We did. We did take 3 million people out of Africa.
You and I didn't. No, you and I didn't. I can lament what some of our ancestors did. I can't feel guilty for it.
So that means you take... So hold on. So you're telling me with a straight face you don't take pride in Britain, in us defeating the Nazis in World War II? You've never taken pride in that?
I take pride in it. I admire the fact of what
How can you take pride in it? It's not us.
Well, no, of course. I can't claim the credit for having done that because I didn't. My parents did. I didn't.
We as British people take pride.
Only indirectly.
So why can't we take guilt indirectly?
In terms of guilt, because you cannot be guilty for something you didn't do. You can be responsible for the effects. You can't be guilty for it.
But you can take pride in something you didn't do. But you can take pride in something you didn't do.
Metaphorically. So I prefer to use the word admiration now.
Okay, but most British people take pride in our win over the Nazis. Let's go to the audience here in the Conway Hall. Let's go to the lady in the third row.
Lord Biggar, you've spent much of your career arguing for moral clarity. Now that you've joined the House of Lords after getting peership by Cami Badenoch, the leader of the Conservative Party, do you worry that association might blur the lines between your academic voice and your political one?
Good question. Is that something you have to think about?
So I deliberately became politically committed. That doesn't mean to say that I've abandoned my mind or my conscience. When you're politically committed, you have to support things you don't entirely agree with. If I disagreed with something sufficiently, I could either abstain or resign, and I would. But it's part of the parliamentary game, if you like, that you have to commit yourself to a party. You don't agree with everything in the party. It doesn't matter which party you commit yourself to. But I think at this point in my life, I want to be committed rather than stand on the sidelines and spectate as an academic.
Would you describe yourself as a right-wing person?
No, I wouldn't, actually. I regard myself as a moderate person. People on the far left regard me as far right.
Well, some of your critics have pointed out that you spend a lot of time with kind of Viktor Orban-affiliated groups, and that's not a great look when you're talking about nationalism and history.
I absolutely reject any notion of damnation by association. I associate with all sorts of people. When I get to stand up on a platform that Viktor Orban may have shared in Washington, and I get to stand in London, you can be sure that I speak my mind, not his.
London and Washington, what about Budapest?
I mean, what's that got to do with... I mean, Viktor Orban lives in Budapest, what's that got to do with me?
You write in the book, in Colonial, you say, what has Viktor Orban got to do with me?
Yeah, exactly. What has it got to do with me?
Well, you launched your book at a Viktor Orban-funded think tank called the MCC in Budapest the year before.
The director of the MCC is not Viktor Orban.
The chair of the board?
It's Balos.
Yes.
Not Viktor.
He's the political director?
No connection.
No connection between Balos Orban and Viktor Orban?
No.
Balos Orban is the political director of Viktor Orban's prime ministerial office.
But it's not Viktor Orban.
I didn't say he was.
Right. So I mean, the MCC is an educational
It's funded by the Orban government. The New York Times has written many pieces about how it's linked to
There's much
Orban.
about the Orban government I disagree with. Okay. This project, I think, is very good.
But it's strange to write in the book, what has Viktor Orban got to do with me, when you'd literally spoken at an Orban-funded think tank alongside his political director?
I just wanted to make the point, when I step on a platform, I speak my mind, not anyone else's.
Fair enough. Okay, thank you for that. Let's go back to the audience. Let's go to the gentleman here in the front row.
We are focusing very much on how the empire is viewed in this country. But in countries like India, colonial institutions are regularly commemorated. These commemorations are fully reported in India by all their press, but they're completely ignored in this country. And I'm asking, why is it that commemorations are ignored in this country?
Is your point being that there are a lot of people in India who appreciate those colonial...
So, whereas they do in former colonies.
Well, I'm going to put that question... I'm suspecting Nigel might agree with you on that, so I'm going to put that question to Gomindan. So do you want to respond that actually a lot of Indians appreciate what the British did?
I think Indians are probably the same as Brits in that they don't know their history very well. I mean, one of the things about British Empire is... I mean, so the arguments that have been made, we have to look at history seriously. And one of the things that's missing in the conversation and in the books is really this sense of connection between Britain and India and the ways in which India has funded so much of what exists within Britain. So slavery has contributed, but so has colonialism in India. And there's a failure to recognize the extent to which colonial and slave wealth has actually built every institution in this country that we're in. And I'd just like to say one other thing. One of the things that we talked about in terms of, stuff happens in the past and therefore we can't sort of address it in the present. Well, if we go to Edmund Burke and Edmund Burke's understanding of society, he understood society as a partnership between the living, the dead, and the not yet born. And the institutions are what combine the past, the present, and the future. And if there are injustices in institutions in the past, they manifest as inequalities in the present. So we have to address those inequalities in the present to make good the injustices of the past.
Okay. Let's go back to the audience.